Hi, I'm Bruce Eckel.
And I'm James Wharton.
This is First Steps in Flex, and we're going to look at pop-ups. So all the stuff we've been doing has been pretty fun. We've been able to kind of color outside the lines pretty easily. But what about your basic Windows applications, windowing applications? You know, you got to have things that are components that people are used to seeing, and I want to make sure that we have all of those. For example, what about dialog boxes?
Yes, we do need some dialog boxes. So there's a manager in Flex called the PopUp Manager, which allows you to create these pop-up dialog boxes. They can be confirmation dialog boxes or alert notifications, those sorts of things.
Just like you see in any windowing system.
That's right. That's right.
And we typically have modal and non-modal, or sometimes called modeless dialog boxes.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And the difference there is in the world of Flex, in some programming models, a modal window actually stops execution until the modal dialog is cleared. And in Flex, background execution still continues to run, but what really happens is that the UI of the application just gets disabled until the user clears the dialog. So that's a modal dialog in Flex.
So am I going to have to invent a bunch of dialogues from scratch, or are there ones that are built in?
There are some that are built in, and then there are also ones that you can build from scratch or from some of the base components.
Okay. Let's see how it works.
Okay. Let's go build a new Flex project, and we'll call this one PopUps. So in this one, what we're going to do is first create a just real basic modal dialog button that's triggered by clicking a button. And so we're going to just use the alert. And let me take out the layout absolute here to start. So let's go add a button and set the label to alert and set a click handler to alert.show. And what we're going to say is modal, and that's it. We do need to import that alert class, so let's go add a script block here and go in and add import mx.controls.alert.
Could you also just be completely explicit about it in the click? Could you say mxcontrol.alert.show?
We can. This works for some reason only with alert, so you can't do that. I typically don't use that syntax because it only works with alert for some reason.
So it would be confusing,
yeah,
because you'd expect it to work everywhere, and it doesn't.
Okay. And so I'm not sure why in Flex that only works on alert. But yeah, so I usually just do the import. So let's run this one and see what happens. So what we have is our button. We click it, and now we get a modal dialog with that alert. And so this is modal. We can drag it around. Nothing in the application is working.
And it's
all
fuzzed
been
out.
disabled.
Yeah.
It's all been fuzzed out. And there's different parameters you can set on alert to, customize the graying out. And those
so until you dismiss it, there's nothing else you can do.
That's right. That's right. So that's just your basic alert. There's some other parameters on the alert. You can set the title and those sorts of things. So that's a basic one. Let's go now to customized pop-up. And so to do this, what we're going to do is create a new custom component. So you'll remember from the components chapter that we use this mx:component tag. And we could have also done this in a separate class file as well. We're going to give this the class name of PopUp window. And then the object that we'll be extending is title window, and our title window we're going to say show a close button is true, so we want to have a close button on it so they can show it. And then let's set the title of this title window to be a custom dialog. Now inside of our title window we want to have just a label, so our label will say in here a custom, did this wrong, get it consistent with the book here, a custom dialog goes in the label, and the title of the title window is non-modal. So that's how we have it in the book. So there we go, that's our label. And now we're going to set up some event handlers in this title window component that we're creating. So the first one is I'm going to add a creation complete event handler. And in creation complete, this is an event that gets triggered once this object has been created. What we're going to do is we're going to call the pop-up manager, and you'll see that it adds the import in for the pop-up manager for us. We'll clean that up a little bit. And so now we're going to say on the pop-up manager, center pop-up. And what we want to center, the pop-up that we want the pop-up manager to center, this is just going to center it horizontally and vertically.
Create pop-up, it says. Did you mean center pop-up?
I did mean center. Where is...
Pair programming in action.
That's right. Center. There we go. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, so we're going to center this pop-up. Now, we will also want to handle the close event.
Now, I don't know if we've introduced this before. I don't recall if we have, but even if we have, it's basically the current object, if you're doing object-oriented programming like C++ or Java or those things. But this,
in this case, refers to the instance that the pop-up manager will create of this class. The class is pop-up window, which extends title window. Okay,
but if we were outside of this component, it would refer to the application?
It would refer to the application.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so now in our close, let's call the pop-up manager. And what we're going to say is remove pop-up and this. So again, we just tell the pop-up manager to remove this pop-up, which is the instance of pop-up window that will be created by the pop-up manager. Then, last thing here is let's have a button. And our button here will actually pop up, create the pop-up window based on the class pop-up window. So label, we'll say title window. And now inside of this button, let's add a click event handler. And in our click event handler, what we're going to say is pop-up manager dot create pop-up. So now here's where we call create. And this takes some parameters. The first one is the parent, which is this. So in this case, this is the application.
Okay. Yep. So it has to know which application created it so that it can attach it to that or whatever. Okay.
Yep.
Well, but that could also be a sub window or something like that as well, right? Okay.
That's right. Yeah, and so then we need to specify the class name. So the class name is kind of going to be used this as a factory to create an instance of that pop-up window. So now I just pass it the class name, which we specified up in our component. You'll see that there's some other parameters here on create pop-up, like whether or not we want it to be modal, and so on. So, but we're just going to leave it non-modal.
Didn't we already import that?
We interesting. Yeah. So what happened was here in our main application, we needed the pop-up manager import here, but then also in our custom component, we need it because this is essentially a different class file. So because this is a different class, it doesn't have the same imports as the main application does.
So even though the main application seems to be in an outer scope from that, it's not going to see it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. This is essentially like an inner class.
So when the compiler sees that, it goes, okay, I'm just going to go off and create a separate file for that thing.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so let's save this and then go reload and see if it works. So there we get our original alert, and that still works, of course. And now if we click on this title window one, we get our non-modal custom title window pop-up window component. So we can drag this around. We can still click those other ones as well. We can create more than one if we want. And then when we click the close X button, what that does is calls that pop-up manager.remove pop-up. You will see that when we first click that, it does center this window horizontally and vertically because we're calling that center pop-up API up here.
Now, what if I wanted to add some more components to our little pop-up window? Say, for example, I wanted to not have the little X to close it, and instead I wanted a button to close it.
We could definitely do that. So what we would do is set show close button to false, and then what we would have is maybe underneath our label, let's go add in a button and say close, and now we're going to have a click event handler on our button. So rather than having this close event here on the title window, we're going to instead move that and rename it to click. So now what is happening is that when someone clicks that button, rather when they click the X, which will no longer be displayed, then we'll call the remove pop-up. So let's give that a try. Title window, there we go. We get our close button, and when we click close, it closes.
So basically, a pop-up dialog is just another kind of window, and we could put all kinds of stuff
Anything
in it,
you want.
and we could customize it in many different ways. We could make it look different. And
Absolutely.
Everything. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.